Hey guys, I'm the 50s kid. Behind me is an E53. It's a 2001 BMW X5 with a 4.4 engine. And the problem it has is that the outer CV boots on the front axles are torn. And when this happens, all the grease is going to get flung out of there, and then the road grime is going to get inside, and it's going to cause the joint to wear out prematurely, and then you're going to get a clacking sound when you're turning around corners. This one doesn't quite have the clacking sound yet, but I'm going to go ahead and do the repair, and I'm not going to change the CV boots. I'm going to replace the axles because for the most part that's what you're going to be doing, because most people don't notice this until you have the noise, and then you're just going to have to replace the axle at that point. It's also just a little bit easier. Not a lot of people actually repair CV axles these days because just cost-wise it doesn't really make sense. I got 2 remanufactured axles off eBay for 120 bucks, so that's pretty good. That, you know, for 60 bucks an axle, that's right in line with any four-wheel drive car. Anyway, let's get started. So these are the various tools you're going to need to do this job. We got your automated tools if you have them. We've got a 6mm Allen socket, a 10, a 16, and an 18mm socket. You need a 36mm 12-point socket. This is important. You can't do the job without this. I like to use an S-hook to suspend the brake caliper from the coil spring. You're going to need a chisel or just a screwdriver of some kind. You're going to need a 16 and an 18mm wrench. This is just a socket extension. You need 2 sizes of screwdriver. We've got a pry bar, a short pry bar here. We've got a long-handled ratchet. Any kind of ratchet will do. Need a little hammer, ball-peen hammer. And this is, optionally, this is a breaker bar, which you're going to need in conjunction with the handle to your floor jack if you don't have like an impact wrench, a pneumatic impact wrench, in order to get the wheel nut off. You're also going to need WD-40, some lithium grease, and some brake clean, and then some paper towels. So we got to get this nut unstaked right here. I'm just going to use a screwdriver to do that. So you need a 36mm 12-point socket in order to get this wheel lock nut off. And if you have a big impact, which I do, you can just go ahead and spin this off. In fact, you don't need to unbend the ears to do that. They'll just unbend themselves. But I want to show you what you do if you don't have an impact gun. You're going to use a breaker bar, and then you're also going to put your floor jack on your breaker bar as a cheater pipe. But the problem is, when you try to turn that, the whole wheel just spins. So you're going to use your screwdriver to lock that in place. Slip it in between the fins on the brake rotor, and that'll lock up against the brake caliper. Then you can go ahead and get the wheel nut off. Pull with all your might. And that's it. From then on, we should be able to just use the breaker bar as normal. Now, if you're anywhere in the rust belt, you might be extremely unlucky and you might have this axle seize in the bore that it goes through. If that be the case, I don't know. I don't live in the rust belt. I can't really give you too many tips on doing that other than get an air hammer and air chisel, you know, and just pound on the inside of it. That's why it's indented in there like that. It's made for doing that. But that's usually not a problem for me. Turn the key to the first position. That way you unlock the steering wheel and you can go ahead and turn everything towards you so you can work on it better. The basic procedure here is we're going to be removing the brake caliper. We can just remove the whole brake caliper and caliper bracket as an assembly. We'll hang it up. We're going to remove the brake rotor, and then we're going to disconnect the 2 lower suspension arms that go to the bottom of the knuckle. That way the knuckle is mobile and we can actually get it up and out of the way and then pull the axle out from behind it. So that's the basic procedure. So let's see if we can get in here and spread out the brake caliper just a little. Cool, that should be just enough. It's a 16 for the brake caliper brackets. And I'm trying not to whack on this thing with my hammer anymore. Or with my hand. I'm trying not to hammer on it with my hand anymore, because that does actually cause damage to your hand. I'm trying to think about my long-term health here, you know? Got 1 bolt, 2 bolts. So I like to hang the brake caliper up using an S-hook off of the suspension. Oop, if we get that the right way. Here, let's go through the hole here. So to get the brake rotor off, there's a screw. A screw right here. It's a number 6 Allen. Now, if yours is really, really rusty, one way you can break the rust is to just put your socket in there, hammer on it. That nice hammering action like loosens up the rust. Set our brake rotor aside. So we want to go ahead and get the lower control arm off first. You'll notice that this has been replaced. Actually, I have an old video on replacing these. In that video, I actually used a Chinesium brand part from eBay. That only lasted about 2 years, and then there was play in this one again. So this time I replaced it with a Lemforder, which is the OEM brand. I don't know why the boot came white though, but it's a 16 on this side and an 18 on this side. There. So now look at the amount of swing we got here, guys. We might not need to actually remove this lower control arm right here, or whatever it is, sway link, because we should have enough room here. So can't find my PB blaster right now. There. Cool. So that's all we need to do. So we should be able to just pop this axle out of there. There's a little circlip on the end of the shaft that's sort of holding it in, and all you got to do is sort of pop it with a pry bar. And one problem is this subframe is kind of in the way, and I'm hoping I don't have to take the lower reinforcement plate off. And I should be able to slip my pry bar in right here and pry, but I don't know if my pry bar is long enough. So let me see if I can pop it. Now, see, the pivot point is actually just too far back, so I can't actually get enough leverage to pop it. So I'm gonna have to get a longer pry bar. Okay, so I got my monster pry bar here. Hopefully, we'll be able to get it with this one. Not so much. I think I am prying on the right part. Yeah, I should be. Yeah, we might have to take the lower splash plate down just so I can come in from the back and just be able to hammer on it with a pry bar. That'll pop it out for sure. Okay. I think that's what we have to do. So I'm not going to film the lower reinforcement plate removal. There's just 6 number 16 bolts, and then you just, you stick a 16mm wrench up through here and just kind of hold on the nuts, because they all have nuts, unfortunately. So you just kind of get the wrench on the nuts from below and use an impact to remove them, or whatever you choose. So that's just basically how it goes. Okay, so now I have clear access to the back of the axle. Now I should be able to tap on it with this shorter pry bar. Hopefully it'll come out. There we go. So that's all I needed to do is kind of break the circlip free, and now I can just pull it out from the front. Okay, so now that should just come right out. There we go. And that little circlip on the end is what was holding it in. Just that little circlip. All we had to do was compress it in a little, and then the shaft would slide right off. So if your front differential seal is leaking in any way, now's a good time to replace it. Although I seriously doubt these would be leaking. So I was mistaken. These actually are new premium axles. Aftermarket, of course, but hey, they're new, not remanufactured. They come with a new lock nut, so that's really nice. You've got these protective sheaths on them, so we'll have to pull those off. So the instructions say to put a little bit of lithium grease on the circlip before we slip it in. So I'm going to use this lithium grease that Deoxit sent me out to check out and use in some of my videos. I'm gonna say right off the bat, I like it a little better than the can of lithium grease that I've owned in the past, because that thing squirted all over the place and made a huge mess. So this thing is pretty neat and tidy. So I've checked it out, and this axle matches the old one precisely. I'll just go ahead and try to slip this guy in. We might need to help the circlip a little, or not. Pop, and we're in. And here I'm just spraying it down with some lithium grease. That way it doesn't seize in the splines, just in case I ever need to change it again. Then we'll just get that new lock nut spun on. And here I'm putting the lower control arm back up in place. Slip the bolt in, goes from the front to the back, and I'm just tapping it in with a hammer there. Getting the nut back on here. You actually don't want to tighten this up all the way, because you're going to actually cause damage to the bushing. You want to wait until you get the tire back on and you lower the vehicle back to the ground, and then you want to reach up from underneath and tighten it that way. Because that way, when if the vehicle goes over a bump, it'll extend, but then it'll rest in the normal position. So if you tighten it here, it's actually going to stretch the bushing out, and you don't want that. So now we're getting the brake rotor back on. You want to make sure you align the hole where the little screw goes. Put that screw in. You might want to change that screw if yours is particularly rusty. If you live in the Rust Belt, just go ahead and buy yourself a new screw when doing this job. So we'll go ahead and get the brake caliper back into place. Now you can just spin the wheel out so you can work on it better. Get those bolts in and screwed in. You want to torque them to factory spec. Put your brake pad sensor back in. You want to make sure the little nub faces the rotor. Now we're going to do that same trick. Put the screwdriver in and use the breaker bar and the handle of our floor jack to tighten the lock nut. Now you'll notice that the wheel's moving here as I tighten it up. So what you want to do is you want to lock your steering wheel again, turn the key back to the 0 position. That way the wheel won't spin when you're tightening that up. And then you want to use a chisel to bend the ears of the lock nut in place. So the passenger side axle is basically the same as the driver's side. I just had to sort of come in and stick a screwdriver in sideways like this and bash on the screwdriver, and that eventually just popped it free. Now we're just gonna pull this sucker out, and it's gonna be a long one. Let's make sure that we've got clearance for it. See, the issue is that it won't actually clear this upper part of the suspension right here. Okay, what I've done is I've unbolted the other control arm, the other lower control arm. There's just two 16mm bolts that you can unbolt the ball joint with. So hopefully that's given me a little more, although I don't think so, but maybe. There we go, just enough. And who knows, maybe if I pulled a little harder, I might not have even needed to do that. Not really sure. And so this is what I was talking about here. This is the lower ball joint that just unbolts from the whole control arm here. So I was just able to unbolt that, 2 bolts on either side, and it popped out.
So with this one, I was able to slip in, and you definitely have to take off this other suspension arm, because it's just, there's not enough room without it. When I was trying to get it back in, this accidentally slipped back into the hole that it was on, and I just could not get that extra little bit that I needed. So I had to take it out and, you know, take them apart again. Once I had it in there, I was able to just kind of do that, and that just kind of hammered it right into place. And so now it's right seated where it needs to be. So now that I've got the car on the ground, I got the suspension loaded, I'm gonna reach under here and tighten this lower control arm bolt. Okay, now here's the left side. So all in all, not too bad a job. I honestly wish somebody had done this video so that I could know a couple of the shortcuts before I started. But, you know, at the end of the day, we got it done. If you enjoyed the video, if you learned something, toss me a subscribe. I'm the 50s Kid. Thanks a lot for watching.